Good morning, everyone. My name is Adama Mshalelo, and today I'd like to basically offer solutions to most of our problems that we're facing on the continent, in particular my country where I'm from, Namibia. But this is basically advice that is applicable to many of the African countries and the African continent. Now, first thing is first, and this is what needs to be understood. Now, we need to get rid of the tendering system. Now, many of you would notice that a lot of individuals only got their millionaire status because of tenders. Now, we all understand that many of these tenders, they are usually awarded in dubious ways, and they are usually awarded to the friends, family, and sometimes even relatives of the people who are currently in power. I'll give a classic example. When President Pohamba was in charge, he gave his daughter tenders for the mass housing. Now, technically, he will obviously argue and say that it wasn't him that gave the tenders. But if I'm president and my wife just so happens to receive a catering tender, do you guys think that I did not have any form of influence in order for my wife to get a catering tender or a construction tender or whatever tender? Obviously, there must have been some form of influence from me being her husband. Now, this is typically what happens in Africa. That is why if you go to Angola, the richest woman on the African continent was once the daughter of a president. That's because in Africa, when people occupy positions of power, it's all about self-enrichment. Now, this is what we need to do. We need to get rid of the tendering system, and we need to replace it with an industrialized system. Now, what do we mean by industrialized system? That simply means if government wants to buy medicines for the hospitals, instead of government giving out a tender to one single individual who usually has a briefcase and nothing else for $500 million or whatever, government then says, we are going to set up factories, we are going to buy the machinery, we are going to buy the equipment that is needed, plus the raw materials in order for us to start producing, whether it is the Panado, whether it is whatever medicine that is needed for our hospitals, which is usually called paracetamol. Panado is just one of the brands. So this paracetamol can be produced locally by an institution that will be created by government, so that we get rid of this tendering process where one individual is enriched and the rest of us have unfortunately benefited from that enrichment. Now, when we create these factories, number one, we're solving two problems. The first problem that you're solving is the issue of unemployment, meaning that you can now have a lot of people who are employed because the people need to be working in this factory. The second problem that you're solving is you are now no longer dependent on other countries to supply you with medicine. You can now produce your own medicine. The other issues that we can look at, let's look at, for example, the construction industry. Government used to have state-owned enterprises that used to construct either roads or buildings. But today, because those companies were killed in favor of individual and well-political connected companies, now, when government needs to build a hospital, that hospital has to be built by a private company because unfortunately government apparently doesn't have its own capacity to build its own hospital. So what we need to do is government needs to have companies that are self-sufficient and self-reliant in terms of road constructions, sewer constructions, whatever type of construction that needs to be done. It can be done by government companies so that we don't need to get a Chinese company or an Indian company or a privately owned Namibian company to come and do these constructions of this road network infrastructures for our country. The other thing that we need to look at is the Ministry of Defense. Now, defense spends a lot of money buying weapons. Now, what the defense need to do is we need to set up a research and development company whereby we are able to produce the guns, the bullets, the armored vessels, or whatever military equipment that we need for our army. Can you believe it that our army, up until today, sometimes we buy uniforms, just a normal uniform. We have to buy it from Brazil. Do you know why we have to buy a uniform from Brazil? Because someone wants to benefit from that corrupt tender. So the whole tendering system is a system that was kept so that people can steal from the government. And that is why we need to get rid of the tendering system so that we can also get rid of this corruption that is so high in government. Because a pen like this, if you go to the shop, it costs $5. But government will buy this pen for $100. Can you believe it? The pen costs $5, but government will buy this pen for $100 because it was put on tender. And then government will spend 50 million buying a few pens that they could have produced themselves. So what we're saying is, in the education sector, the pens, the pencils, all these things that are going to be needed, rulers, rubbers, all these things, we must have companies that will be producing those things for our schools. We must get rid of this tendering system. Then as a result, we have many factories where our young people can go and work in those factories. Our young people will have jobs, and that means that our young people will now no longer have to be suffering. Now, we also must get rid of this food catering tenders. Right now, our prisons are full. They are full of prisoners. What needs to be done is government needs to allocate some of these resettlement farms to the prison. Then these inmates who are now sentenced and are in prison, they should be working on those farms in order to produce food, number one, for the prison, so that the prisoners can have food for them to eat, so that the government does not buy food for prisoners. Number two, the food, some of it that will be produced by the prisoners, it has to go to the hospitals, to the schools, so that our children are fed, so that they can be able to concentrate while they're in school, so that the people who are sick in hospitals are also able to be fed in order for them to become better and obviously come out of the hospitals and become productive citizens of this country. So the solutions are there in terms of how we can solve our problems. The only current problem right now is that we continue electing and voting people into power who do not have an understanding of what needs to be done in order to bring about economic emancipation for our people. The other critical problem with young people is that many of us do not want to go register to vote, and many of us, we do not turn up for elections. On election day, young people will be in the queues with their cooler boxes. They will be there busy drinking, and the moment they get invited to a shabin, they leave the queue, they go drink, they no longer vote. But the old people, they are there patiently in those queues. They will be there seated in those queues, or they will be there standing in those queues, and they will vote for their other fellow old comrades who don't understand how to run the country. And you young people will continue to suffer. You will continue looking for specials of 3 for 50 and all these promotions, because you are now just consumed by a mindset of alcohol, because you are not productive, because you have no employment and you've got nothing to do. And this is how many of us young people who go to school, who graduate, who get a degree, you are unable to find a job, and you start thinking someone has witched you or someone has put witchcraft on you. But it's not witchcraft. We are simply living in poverty simply because we do not want to exercise our rights, which is to basically vote for people who have an understanding of how to build an economy. Thank you for watching. Please share this video in terms of the solutions on how we can develop Africa and how we can develop our countries. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Cheers. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.